The sun was a dying ember over the ruined city, painting the shattered skyline in shades of blood and ash. Below, in the oppressive silence of a collapsed library, Ilara lay trapped, her leg pinned under a fallen concrete beam. To the scavenger warlord who found her, she was just another piece of discarded debris, a source of sport before a bullet. He leaned close, his breath reeking of decay, and sneered at her dusty engineer's overalls and bloodied face. "Nothing personal," he rasped, raising his pistol. "The strong take. The weak become lessons." Ilara didn't beg. She didn't even look at the gun. Her eyes, a startling and clear gray in the grime, were locked on the intricate mechanics of his prized trophy. The helicopter gunship idling just beyond the rubble, its rotor blades slicing the thick air. A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched her lips. He misread her silence for surrender, her stillness for helplessness. It was the last mistake he would ever make. The strong take. But the smart they hijack. The pistol's muzzle looked like a bottomless hole, a perfect circle of ending. Ilara's world had narrowed to that dark point, the scavenger's grinning face behind it, and the deep, rhythmic thump-thump-thump of the helicopter's rotors 50 yards away. Her legs screamed under the weight of the concrete, a white-hot agony she had forced into a distant corner of her mind. Pain was data. Fear was a useless variable. "Pretty thing like you," the warlord, Kargan, mused, his free hand gesturing to his 5 brutish followers who chuckled in the gloom. "Might have kept you for a while, but you saw the compound. Can't have loose ends." Ilara's mind wasn't on his words. It was tracing the sound of the helicopter's engine. A twin-turbine VK, 2500 by the timbre. Old, pre-collapse military stock, probably heavily cannibalized and patched. The inconsistent rotor slap suggested damaged or unbalanced blades on the tail rotor. A weakness. "Data. I'm an engineer," she said, her voice not a plea but a flat statement cutting through his monologue. Kargan paused, his eyebrow raised. And your bird has a failing tail, rotor bearing. Listen to the high-frequency vibration under the engine noise. You put it under full stress in a climb, it'll shear. You'll spin in before you know what happened." Silence fell, broken only by the chopper's idle. Kargan's sneer faltered for a second, replaced by a flicker of calculation. He knew his machine had been feeling off. His mechanic, a brute good for changing tires, and little else, had just shrugged. This trapped woman had diagnosed it from 30 meters while pinned and at gunpoint. He lowered the pistol just an inch. "You can fix it?" "I designed fluid dynamics systems for the arcologies," Ilara said, the ghost of pride in her hollow tone. "I can fix your children's toy." A dangerous light entered Kargan's eyes. A resource was more valuable than a moment's cruelty. He barked a command. 2 of his men stepped forward, using a crowbar to lever the concrete beam, just enough for a third to drag Ilara free. The pain as her leg came loose was volcanic, blinding. She bit her tongue until she tasted blood, refusing to scream. Black spots danced in her vision, but she focused on the helicopter, its silhouette against the orange sky. Her ticket out. They didn't give her a splint, just a rusted metal pole as a crutch. Every hop towards the clearing where the gunship sat sent jolts of nausea through her. She cataloged everything. The men, 5, armed with a mix of automatic rifles and poorly maintained pistols. Kargan, the leader, arrogant, possessive of his technology. The helicopter, a monstrous, angular thing, its faded camouflage patched with mismatched panels. As she neared, her engineer's heart both mourned and assessed. It was a brutalized masterpiece. Kargan shoved her towards the open side door. "Fix it. You have until dawn. It flies right. You live as my pet mechanic." "It doesn't." He let the thread hang. Ilara nodded, pulling herself into the dim interior. It stank of oil, sweat, and stale fuel. She ignored the men leering from outside, their jokes about her fate. Her hands, though caked with dirt and blood, began to move over the control panels, the cyclic, the collective, the instrument displays. It was a familiar dance. She found the maintenance panel for the tail rotor assembly, prying it open with a fingernail. The diagnosis was correct. The bearing was cracked, grease contaminated with metal shavings. A death sentence waiting to happen. She called out for tools, for the spare parts she knew they must have scavenged. Cargan, watching with arms crossed, ordered his men to bring a crate. It was a mess of mismatched components, but it was a treasure trove. Among the junk was a serviceable bearing and a sealed pack of proper grease. For hours, she worked. The pain in her leg was a constant throb, but her hands were steady. She lost herself in the logic of it, the alignment, the torque specifications, the clean flow of hydraulics. The men grew bored, posting one guard by the door while the others retreated to a small fire, drinking and arguing. The guard, a lanky man with a perpetual sniff, watched her for a while, then slumped against the fuselage, dozing. This was her chance. Not to run. She'd never make 10 meters. But to learn. Her movements became slower, more deliberate, as she pretended to continue her work while her eyes scanned the cockpit layout. She traced the fuel lines, identified the emergency battery isolator, noted where the weapons systems control was clumsily rigged to the co-pilot side. She so carefully, loosened a connection on a secondary hydraulic line. Not enough to leak, but enough to cause a slow-pressure drop later. A planned failure. Just before dawn, she announced it was done. Cargan stomped over, his face eager. It's fixed. The bearing is replaced. The vibration will be gone, she said truthfully. But the systems are old. They need a gentle touch. No aggressive maneuvers for the first flight. He laughed a harsh bark. It's a gunship, woman. Gentleness isn't in its vocabulary. He shoved her aside and climbed into the pilot's seat, firing up the engines. The helicopter came to life with a roar that shook the ground. Alara, pushed to the edge of the clearing with the other men, watched as he lifted the machine into a wobbly hover. He executed a few turns. The sickening vibration was gone. Cargan whooped in triumph, his voice crackling over the radio one of his men held. He set the ship down again, jubilant. You did it. You actually did it. He jumped out, clapping his men on the back. We celebrate. Then, we raid the northern settlements at full strength. Alara was given a canteen of water and a strip of tough meat. She was no longer an immediate target. She was an asset. They partied around the fire as the sun rose, drinking foul-smelling liquor. Cargan, emboldened, decided to show off. He grabbed Alara's arm, hauling her towards the helicopter. Come on, pet. Take a ride. See what your hands have wrought. He pushed her into the co-pilot's seat, buckling her in roughly before taking the pilot's position. Two of his more sober men climbed into the back. This was it. Her heart hammered against her ribs, not with fear, but with a fierce, focused intensity. The engines whined to life. The rotors beat the air into submission. They lifted off, the ruined city spreading out beneath them like a corpse. Cargan put the machine through its paces, banking hard, climbing steeply. See? Smooth as silk. He yelled over the din. Alara nodded, bracing herself against the seat. She was waiting for the slow drain she'd engineered to manifest. They were 2 miles from the camp, over a sprawling sector of collapsed highways, when a warning light flickered on the panel. Hydraulic pressure B. Low. Cargan frowned, tapping the glass. What's that? Auxiliary system, Alara shouted back. Probably a sensor. The old ones are brittle. She needed him distracted, questioning the machine, not her. He muttered a curse, his confidence dented. He leveled the craft out, focusing on the instruments. The man in the back left seat leaned forward. Boss, look, the settlement's east. Let's just go. As Cargan turned his head to argue, Alara moved. It wasn't a dramatic lunge. It was a precise, surgical strike. Her hand, small and quick, darted to the collective control between the seats. She didn't try to wrest it from his grip. Instead, she pressed the force trim release button and, at the same instant, with all her strength, yanked the collective up to its maximum pitch. The helicopter reacted violently. It leapt upwards like a startled animal, its nose pitching skyward. The sudden G-forces slammed Cargan back into his seat, his grip torn from the controls. The man in the back was thrown against his harness with a grunt. What are you doing? Cargan bellowed, scrambling for the cyclic. Alara was already 2 steps ahead. Her other hand shot out to the overhead panel and hit the battery master switch, killing all non-essential electronics for a split second. The cockpit went dark, screens blinking out. In that moment of shock confusion, she released the switch. As systems rebooted, she had already located her true target. The emergency fuel shut-off lever for the left engine, bright red and guarded by a small latch. She flipped the guard and pulled. The left engine's whine descended into a choking sputter. The helicopter yelped sharply. Kargan was now in a full panic, wrestling with a dying machine. "You've killed us. You bitch, you've killed us." "Shut it down," screamed the man in the back. "Auto watata." Auto-rotation, the emergency procedure for landing a helicopter without engine power. It was her only hope, and it required a calm, trained pilot. Kargan was neither. He was a bully who'd learned to point a machine at things and pull the trigger. His movements were frantic, wrong. Alara, still strapped in, was a statue of concentration. She watched the altimeter unwind. 1,500 feet. 1,200. The ground rushed up. She calculated the drift, the wind. This was the moment. As Kargan froze, staring at the approaching ground in utter terror, Alara's hands flew across the co-pilot's controls. She didn't try to take over. The system wouldn't let her. But she could assist. She stomped on the right anti-torque pedal to correct the spin, her hands stabilizing the cyclic, not fighting Kargan's death grip, but guiding it. "The collective," she snapped, her voice cutting through his paralysis like a knife. "Lower it now. Now." The tone of command worked where sense did not. His muscle memory responded. He pushed the collective down. The helicopter's descent slowed from a crash to a controlled, if brutal, fall. They hit hard. The landing gear screamed, buckling. The fuselage groaned and tipped onto its side with a catastrophic crunch of rending metal. The world became a deafening cacophony of noise, spinning, and dust. Then silence, broken only by the ping of cooling metal and the hiss of escaping steam. Alara hung upside down in her harness, the world inverted. Her leg was a furnace of fresh pain. She smelled fuel, sharp and toxic. She had to move. Now, she found the harness release, falling onto what was now the ceiling of the cockpit with a gasp. Kargan was motionless beside her, a deep gash on his forehead. One of the men in the back was groaning. The other was ominously still. She crawled through the broken front windscreen, glass crunching under her palms, dragging her bad leg behind her. Fresh air, cold and clean, hit her face. They were in the middle of a cracked 6-lane highway, the helicopter a broken insect on its side. The camp was miles away. She was free, but not safe. She heard a muffled curse from inside the wreck. One of them was still functional. She had no weapons, only her knowledge. And the helicopter, even wrecked, was a toolbox. Using her metal pole crutch, she hobbled to the external equipment bay, which had burst open on impact. Inside, strapped to the airframe, was a fire extinguisher and an emergency survival kit. She took the small axe from a kit. As she turned, the surviving guard, a hulking man with a broken nose bleeding profusely, emerged from the wreck, his rifle in hand. He saw her, his eyes narrowing with murderous intent. He raised the weapon. Alara didn't run. She hefted the small axe, her mind clear. The strong take. But they rarely understood what they were taking from. The rifle muzzle swung towards her, unsteady but deadly at this range. The guard, named Rourke, spat a glob of blood onto the asphalt. "You. This is all you." His finger tightened on the trigger. Alara didn't flinch. She threw the small axe. It wasn't a warrior's throw, but an engineer's, aimed not at him, but at the fuel spill snaking from the ruptured tank towards the wreckage. The axe blade struck the concrete, sparking. The spark met the fuel vapor. A soft whump sounded, and a line of fire raced along the spill back towards the helicopter. Rourke's eyes went wide. He forgot Alara, turning to see the bloom of flame licking at the fuselage. No, the ammunition. Alara was already moving, stumbling backwards, putting distance between herself and the impending secondary explosion. Rourke made a fateful choice. He turned and plunged back into the smoking wreck, likely to try and salvage weapons or the radio. It was his last mistake. 3 seconds later, the remaining fuel and a cache of ammunition cooked off. The helicopter didn't explode like in the movies. It erupted in a contained, violent fireball that blew the already damaged fuselage apart. Shrapnel whistled through the air. A piece of twisted metal thudded into the ground a foot from Alara. She shielded her face from the heat. Silence returned, deeper now, underlaid by the crackle of the burning wreck. Kargan, his ambitions, his men, all gone. She was alone on a dead highway under an empty sky. The adrenaline that had sustained her began to ebb, and the agony in her leg surged to the forefront, a red-hot tide threatening to pull her under. She knew she couldn't stay. The fire was a beacon. Scavengers, mutants, or even Kargan's remaining men from the camp would see the smoke. Using her pole, she hauled herself upright. The survival kit had survived her throw. Inside was a foil blanket, water packets, a basic medical kit, and, most importantly, a small compass. She oriented herself. The arcologies, massive, self-contained pre-collapse city fortresses, lay to the northwest. The nearest one, a 17, was rumored to still be functional, a bastion of order and knowledge. It was a myth, a hope. It was also over 100 miles away through contested, broken land. Her first mile took an hour. Every step was a lesson in suffering. She fashioned a better splint from debris and the blanket, but it was a crude thing. By nightfall, she had only made it to the outskirts of the city ruin, finding shelter in the skeleton of a pre-collapsed delivery truck. She allowed herself a few sips of water, a bite of nutrient paste from the kit. Sleep was a dangerous luxury, but her body demanded it. She dozed fitfully, her mind replaying the helicopter's controls, the feel of the collective in her hand. Dawn came gray and cold. The second day was a test of will. The landscape shifted from urban ruin to scrubland, choked with the rusted remains of the old world. Cars, shipping containers, the bones of infrastructure. She saw distant figures moving, but avoided them. The sound of gunfire echoed from hills to the east. She kept moving, a slow, painful pilgrimage. On the afternoon of the third day, the inevitable happened. She was crossing a field of old pylons when a group of 3 scavengers emerged from a ditch. They were thin, desperate, armed with clubs and a single pistol. Their eyes locked on her survival kit, her boots. "Just leave the bag, walk away," their leader, a woman with a scarred face, said, her voice devoid of threat, just stating a transaction. Alara had nothing left for transactions. She was empty of everything but the drive to survive. She leaned on her pole, looking past them, and said quietly, "The stalkers behind you might have other ideas." It was an old trick, but desperation made them glance. In that second, Alara swung her metal pole with both hands, not at them, but at the rusted pylon beside her. The clang was deafening in the quiet. The scavengers startled, thinking it was a signal or a weapon. In their confusion, she lurched past them into the thicker scrub. They gave a half-hearted chase, but she was a ghost, vanishing into the landscape of decay. She left a water packet behind on the ground, a sacrifice to their need. They took it and didn't follow. That night, huddled in a drainage pipe, she finally tended to her leg. It was swollen, purple, likely broken in more than one place. Infection was setting in. The medical kit had antibiotics. She took them, whispering a thank you to the long-dead engineers who'd stocked it. Days blurred. She walked. She drank from filtered puddles when her water ran out. She ate strange, tough tubers she recognized from old survival manuals. The world was vast and empty and full of hidden dangers. But it was also beautiful in its desolation. She saw a deer, untouched by mutation. She watched a storm roll across the plains, a magnificent display of raw power. She was no longer just an arcology engineer, a victim, a pawn. She was becoming a creature of this broken world. On the 8th day, she saw it, a glint on the horizon, like a sliver of a fallen star standing on its end. The sun caught the curved solar array of A17. It was real. A sob, harsh and unexpected, tore from her throat. The hope was a physical pain, worse than her leg. But between her and salvation lay the most dangerous terrain yet. The scour, a wide, open plain picked clean by generations, offering no cover. It was watched by bandits who preyed on those seeking the arcology's safety. She had to cross at night. She waited until moonset under a blanket of stars so bright they cast faint shadows. Her leg was a useless, throbbing weight. She crawled. For hours, she dragged herself through the dust and stones, pausing at every sound. She saw the dark shapes of rider bikes in the distance, spotlights sweeping. She pressed herself into the earth, becoming a stone. Just before dawn, as the great gates of I-17 became clear, a spotlight found her. It pinned her, a ragged, crawling figure in the gray light. An engine gunned. A bike approached, kicking up dust. It skidded to a halt 10 feet away. A rider, clad in leather and scrap metal, looked down at her. He raised a rifle. Alara, exhausted beyond fear, looked up at him. She didn't raise her hands. She simply met his gaze, her gray eyes reflecting the light from the arcology, still clear, still unbroken. She had nothing left to say, no tricks to play. She had come this far. This was the final variable. The rider stared. He saw the determined set of her jaw, the intelligence in her eyes despite the dirt and exhaustion. He saw the crude splint, the evidence of an impossible journey. He lowered the rifle fraction. You alone. She gave a single, slow nod. How'd you get here? Alara's voice was a dry rasp, but the words were clear. I flew. He paused, then let out a short, surprised laugh. He jerked his head towards the towering gates. Get up, flyer. Let's see if they have a hangar for you. He didn't offer to help her. He understood that this was her walk to make. Using her pole, Alara dragged herself to her feet. She took one step, then another, towards the rising sun glinting off the metal of A17. She didn't look back at the wilderness, at the wreckage, at the grave of her old self. She looked only forward, to the hum of generators, the scent of filtered air, the promise of a complex problem waiting to be solved. The strong take, the smart build, and she had just begun. The gates of 17 were not just metal. They were a wall of shaped alloy, taller than 5 men, covered in scratches and old burn marks. They hummed with a low power. A small door opened within the giant gate. A man in clean, gray uniform stepped out. He had a short rifle slung on his shoulder. He looked at the bike rider, then at Alara. His eyes were careful, not cruel. The rider nodded at Alara. Found her in the scour. Says she flew here. The guard's eyebrow went up. He looked her over. She was covered in dirt. Her clothes were torn. Her leg was bent in a bad way. But her face was calm. Her eyes watched him back, steady. Name, the guard asked. Alara. I was a systems engineer for Arcology 9 before the fall. 9 was lost years ago, the guard said. I know, Alara replied. Her voice was rough from thirst. I've been elsewhere since then. The guard was quiet for a moment. Then he stepped aside. Enter. You'll go to quarantine. Then to medical. Then to evaluation. Alara moved forward. Each step was fire. But she crossed the line from broken ground to smooth, clean floor. The door shut behind her with a solid thud. The air changed. It was cool and smelled of chemicals and filtered wind. It was the smell of the old world. It almost made her knees weak. She was in a small, white room. Another person in a white suit gave her a cup of water and a cloth. Clean your face and hands, a voice said through a speaker. She did. Then they had her walk through a mist that made her skin tingle. It was to kill any outside germs. They took her old clothes and gave her a simple gray set like the guard wore, but softer. They gave her a proper crutch, light and strong. Then 2 people came for her. They took her to the medical wing. It was bright. Machines beeped softly. A doctor, a woman with tired eyes, looked at her leg. She took images with a small device. You have 2 breaks. One is old and healed wrong. One is new. There is infection, the doctor said. We must operate. We can fix it. You will walk well again. Alara lay on the bed. She felt the clean sheets. She heard the hum of the lights. For the first time in years, she was safe. The feeling was strange. It made her want to sleep for a year. But she forced her eyes open. After the operation, I want to work. I need to be useful. The doctor smiled a little. Everyone works here. But first you heal. They gave her medicine. The world faded to black. She slept without dreams. She woke up hours later. Her leg was wrapped in a clean cast. A machine was beside her, giving her medicine and water through a tube. The pain was a dull thing, far away. A different person sat by her bed. A man older, with short gray hair and a face lined from thinking. He wore a white coat over his gray clothes. I am Director Kale, he said. I run the engineering division here. The guards told me your story. A flying story. Alara tried to sit up. He motioned for her to stay. It is not just a story, she said. We recovered the wreckage of a helicopter 2 days ago. In the old highway sector, there were bodies. One matched the description of a known scavenger leader called Kargan. His machine. Director Kale watched her face. You were there? Yes. His men at the camp nearby said a woman engineer fixed the helicopter. Then she stole it and crashed it. They thought she died. They were angry. They lost their prize. I did not steal it, Alara said, her voice flat. I repurposed it, and I did not crash it. I landed it under non-standard conditions. A small light came into Director Kale's eyes. It was the look of a man who heard a new, interesting idea. Non-standard conditions. You are an engineer. You speak like one. Tell me, from the beginning. So she told him. She told him of the library, of being trapped, of Kargan finding her. She told him of diagnosing the helicopter by sound, of fixing the bearing, of planning the slow hydraulic leak. She told him of the flight, of her actions in the cockpit, of forcing the emergency landing. She did not make it sound brave. She made it sound like a problem she had solved, a system she had analyzed and changed. Director Kale listened. He did not interrupt. When she finished, he was quiet for a long time. That was not just engineering, he said finally. That was creativity under extreme pressure. We have many good technicians here, people who can follow manuals. We have few who can think like you just did. He stood up. When you are healed, you will come to my division. We will test your knowledge. But I think I already know the result. He left her then. Alara stared at the ceiling. Creativity. He called it creativity. To her, it had just been survival. A different kind of survival than crawling through the scour. But the same thing in the end. Weeks passed. Her leg healed. The doctors were good. They used machines to help the bone grow straight and strong. She walked with a crutch, then with a stick, then on her own. It felt strange to stand on 2 good legs. During this time, she learned about A17. It was a giant closed system. Gardens grew under artificial light. Water was recycled endlessly. Power came from the sun and from deep heat wells. The people here were safe, but they were not free. Everyone had a job. Everyone followed the rules. The rules kept them alive. But the rules also made things slow, made people careful not to try new things. The world outside was a threat, but it was also changing. New groups were forming. New dangers. The scouts of A17 brought back stories. Stories of machines being used by warlords. Not just old helicopters, but old ground vehicles, drones, even pieces of automated defenses. The balance was shifting. Walls were not enough if the enemy could fly over them. Finally, Alara was cleared for work. She went to the engineering division. It was a vast space full of light and noise. People worked on water purifiers, power conduits, farm machinery. Director Kale met her at the door. Welcome to your new life, he said. He showed her to a small workstation. Your first task is simple. These are schematics for our outer sensor array. It fails often. Find out why. Alara sat. She looked at the plans on the screen. She saw the problem in 10 minutes. It was a basic design flaw. A power relay was placed too close to a heat source. It overheated and died. The fix was easy. Move the relay. She wrote her report. She gave it to Director Kale. He read it and nodded. Good. Fast. Now come with me. I want to show you the real project. He led her to a sealed door at the back of the workshop. He used his hand to open it. Inside was a smaller room, and in the center of the room, under bright lights, was a helicopter. It was not like Kargan's broken gunship. This was a different model. Smaller, lighter. Its shell was off, showing its inner parts. A few engineers were working on it, looking frustrated. "This is Project Arrow Scout," Director Kale said. "We recovered it 4 years ago. It is almost complete, but we cannot make it fly. The systems are a maze. The computer brain is locked. We lack the knowledge. Our engineers are good at fixing what exists, not at waking up a dead machine from the old world." Alara walked around it. Her heart beat faster. This was a beautiful machine. It was made for observation, not war. Its lines were clean. She put a hand on its skin. It was cool. "May I?" she asked. "Please," Director Kale said. "This is now your primary task. Make it fly. Do not tell the council. They think it is a lost cause. They would use the parts for other things. I have kept it alive. I believe we need to see the sky again, not just to hide from it." Alara did not need to be asked twice. She forgot the time. She forgot the people around her. She found a computer terminal linked to the helicopter's main brain. She started to dig. The problem was deep. The helicopter's computer was asleep. It needed a key, a code to wake up, a code lost for decades. She tried everything she knew. She read old manuals. She talked to the oldest engineers in the arcology. They gave her clues, but no answers. Days turned into weeks. She lived in the small room. She ate her meals by the helicopter. She learned every wire, every circuit. She found that the machine was not just a vehicle. It was a partner. It was designed to help the pilot, to make flying easier, to see dangers. One night, she was alone. She was looking at a line of code that made no sense. It was a question, a security question from the computer. What is the sound of the sky when it is calm? It was a poetic question, a riddle, not a technical one. The engineers had tried every technical answer. They had failed. Alara leaned back. She thought. She thought of the silence in the library after the collapse. She thought of the wind over the scour. She thought of the moment in Kargan's helicopter before the chaos, when the machine was working perfectly. The sound of the sky when it was calm. It was not a sound you heard with your ears. It was a sound you felt, a vibration, a rhythm. She went to the main keyboard. She did not type a word. She typed a number, a frequency, the perfect harmonic frequency of a main rotor blade in smooth, steady flight. A number she knew in her bones. She pressed enter. The screen went dark. Then a soft blue light filled the cockpit. A low, gentle hum came from the machine. The instrument panel lit up, one light after another, like stars coming out at night. A smooth, synthetic voice came from the speakers. System restarting. Diagnostic complete. All systems nominal. Welcome, operator. Alara let out a breath she did not know she was holding. She had done it. She had woken the machine. But that was only the first step. Now it had to fly. And she had to be the one to fly it. She told Director Kale the next morning. His face broke into a wide smile. He clapped her on the shoulder. "I knew it. I knew you were the key. But I need to test it," Alara said. "I need to take it into the air. A short flight. Inside the arcology dome first." The main dome of A-17 was huge. It covered the farmlands. Its roof was high. There was space to lift a small helicopter. But it was against the rules. Flying inside was forbidden. The council would never allow it. Director Kale's smile faded. "If we ask, they will say no. They will take the project away. They are afraid of the sky." "Then we do not ask," Alara said quietly. He looked at her. He saw the woman who hijacked a gunship. He nodded slowly. "We will need a distraction. During the next council meeting, the main power grid will have a small, temporary fault. The lights will flicker. Everyone will be looking at that. You will have a window. 10 minutes. It was a plan. A dangerous one. If they were caught, they would be put in the cells. Or thrown out of the arcology." But Alara did not hesitate. "I will be ready." 2 days later, the time came. The council met in the central chamber. Director Kale was with them. He gave her a small signal with his hand behind his back. It was time. Alara was in the small room. The helicopter was ready. Its rotors were folded, but it could still move on its small wheels. She had practiced this. She started the engine. It was so quiet, just a whisper. She used a remote control to guide the machine out of the room, through a back corridor and into the vast agricultural dome. The smell of dirt and plants hit her. The air was warm and wet. The ceiling was high above, made of thick glass. She positioned the helicopter in an open area between crop rows. She climbed into the pilot's seat. Her hands touched the controls. They felt right. They felt like home. She took a deep breath. In the council chamber, the lights flickered. People looked up concerned. Director Kale made a show of checking his device. Alara pushed the starter. The rotors unfolded with a smooth, electric sound. They began to turn faster and faster. The noise was a soft thrum in the huge space. A few farm workers looked up, their mouths open in shock. She lifted the collective. The helicopter lightened on its wheels. Then it was in the air. It rose smoothly, steadily. She kept it low, flying over the fields. The controls were perfect. The machine responded to her slightest touch. It was like it was reading her mind. She flew a slow circle around the dome. She tested the controls. She tested the stability. It was better than anything she had ever flown. It was alive. Below, people were pointing. Some were running. But she saw no anger on their faces. She saw wonder. They had not seen a machine fly inside their home in their whole lives. After 8 minutes, she knew she had to land. She brought the machine back to the open area. She set it down as softly as a leaf. The rotors slowed, then folded automatically. She climbed out. Her hand was shaking, but from excitement, not fear. She had done it. The farm workers came closer, not scared but curious. "Is it safe?" one asked. "It is safe," Alara said. "It is here to help us see, to keep us safe." Then the guards arrived. Their faces were stern. They escorted Alara and the helicopter back to the engineering division. They sealed the door. They said Director Kale and Alara were to wait for the council. But the news had spread. The whole arcology was talking about the flight, about the woman who made the old machine fly. The council could not ignore it. When Director Kale and Alara stood before the council later, the mood was not what they expected. The council members were not just angry. Some were thoughtful. One of them, an older woman named Counselor Vey, spoke. "You broke our laws. You risked our power grid for a test." Director Kale began to speak, but Alara stepped forward. "I did, and I'm sorry for the risk. But the greater risk is staying blind. The world outside is not static. It is arming itself with old technology. We found one helicopter. There will be more. We can hide behind our walls and hope they do not find a way over, or we can learn to see them coming. This machine is not a weapon. It is our eyes. My flight today proved it works. It is ready. Let me train pilots. Let's build a skywatch to protect what we have built here." The council was quiet. Counselor Vey looked at Alara for a long time. "You are the one who came from the outside, the one who survived the scour. You think like the enemy because you have lived with them. I think like someone who wants to live," Alara corrected gently. "I want this place to live. To do that, we cannot just be smart inside our walls. We have to be smart about what is outside them." The council debated. It went on for hours. But in the end, the sight of the machine flying, the hope it gave the people, was too strong to deny. Project Aero Scout was approved. Alara was made its lead. She would train a team. They would learn to fly, to watch, to understand the sky. That night, Alara stood on a high balcony, looking out through the thick glass at the dark world outside. The stars were the same as they had been over the ruins. But she was not the same. She was not helpless. She was not just surviving. She was building. She was teaching. She was looking forward. Inside the hangar, her helicopter sat quiet.